Hey everyone, welcome back to Engelbard. The Sega Genesis, or Mega Drive, whatever it was called in your home territory, it was awesome. It's a system that even today, more than 30 years after its Japanese debut in 1988, people are still making games for, and it's got one of the most thriving homebrew communities of any classic system in the year 2021. Well, I've got something special for you today, Genesis fans. I had a good long chat with Pigsy, the homebrew developer working on the Genesis demake of CastleVania Symphony of the Night. Yep, you'll get to hear Pigsy's very first interview on the topic, even though it's more of a discussion than a pure interview, I guess, but I digress. Pigsy's been toiling away on Genesis/Mega Drive Symphony of the Night for a few months now, and he's got a YouTube channel where he shares his experience of developing this game and others. You'll find a link to his channel right up at the top of the screen there somewhere in a card, and also in the description in case you're on a platform where YouTube cards don't work. Because yeah, that's a thing, cards don't work on every platform. This interview is audio only, and if you saw me this week recovering from a particularly nasty illness as I am, you'd thank me for that. Don't worry though, I'll show some interesting stuff while we talk, including some never-before-seen shots and footage of the very early work-in-progress game. Oh, and in the interest of full disclosure, I'm one of about 5 or 6 people creating new, authentic Sega Genesis music for the Genesis Symphony of the Night project. You can hear what I've done so far on my chiptune channel, which is linked above and in the description below. As I mentioned, this is a lengthy discussion, so feel free to take breaks and come back as you can. I didn't want to break it up. On that note, let's commence with the getting on of things, shall we? Alright, so let's go ahead and start with a very simple question first. Just tell me about your most controversial political view and why everybody who thinks the opposite is wrong.
Oh, Jesus.
Alright, don't answer that. Alright, don't answer that one. Just tell me about your history with programming. How did you get into it? What was the first computer you did programming on? And just a little bit of background.
I thought you were going to ask my most controversial gaming question, gaming opinion. And I thought, oh, that's going to be bad. That's going to make a lot of people angry. And when you said political, I thought, oh, that's even worse. I suppose it depends on what your gaming opinion is. Depends what circles you're going in. But okay, yeah, programming. So that's a less controversial. That's a less dangerous question.
Hopefully.
Yeah, for programming a few years ago, I did a bit of Python, just in my free time, and that was quite fun. But then I was busy with work and travel and other things. And then when the COVID lockdown come in, I had a bit more time, so I thought, okay, I'll get back to a bit more Python. And then I thought, why not do some games as well? I've got plenty of time on my hands, so there's a kind of development kit for Python called Pygame where you can develop your games. You can do it in regular Python, but with Pygame it's a bit easier. And I did that for a few weeks, but then I don't know, it's just having a game on your PC is fun to begin with. And then it just lacked a bit of something. So that's when I discovered SGDK, which is the Sega Genesis development kits. And I thought that was a lot more interesting. It's a bit more, I don't know, it has something a bit more special about it that was lacking in the regular Python kind of PC game kits. Okay,
so before learning Python, you hadn't worked on any of the older, let's say, microcomputers or anything like that, the 8 or 16-bit computers back in the day?
Oh no, never. My brother, he had some of the microcomputers, but I was very young at the time, so I just used them for games. I never, unfortunately, I think I was born just a little bit too late to really get involved in the whole, computer programming side. By the time I got into it, it was very, a Master System, just put the cartridge in, turn it on, and even when I used my brother's Amiga, or even if he had like a Spectrum, ZX Spectrum hiding around, I just played the games. Maybe I remember I really got into a game called Civilization 2. I think it's on like the 6th one now, and I've played a little bit of it, and it's pretty fun. But especially Civ 2, I think it was in 96 or 97, so that was when I was already a teenager, and a lot of the game files are in one big text file, so you could kind of modify and change the health of the battleships and so on. So I suppose that might have counted as a little bit of programming in a very simple sense. So if that counts, then I did a little bit of that, a little bit of modding, just for my own, not sharing on the internet, just for my own fun. But apart from that, I did absolutely nothing. And whenever I heard, on YouTube, I saw people doing Mega Drive games and all these retro games. I thought that's incredible. That sounds impossible. How are they doing that? It must be computer programming sounds hard, making games sounds even harder, and making games for retro systems sounds like even harder. It's just like playing on super hard mode.
All right. So why did you settle on the Genesis/Mega Drive versus any of the other systems?
Firstly, I think it's nostalgia is a big part, and just what's kind of special for you. And for me, it was the probably Mega Drive, less Master System too, but Master System I think is still a good system. But 8-bit systems, they're kind of when I'm talking about it, the hardware is not so advanced. Obviously,
just
Mega
more
Drive is a very
limited
old system.
Yeah.
But for the Mega Drive, I think doing a 2D a 2D game is fine. I mean, you get people doing 3D games for the Mega Drive, and that's really tough. And but for a 2D game, you can make it so it's a good frame rate. There's not much sprite flicker. I think it's really well suited. Obviously, the more powerful the system, the more advanced you can do it. But for the kind of games I like to play, I think the Mega Drive Genesis was fine. It's great. It's still good now. And I think the big benefit for the Mega Drive, and the reason why it's not just me but so many other people are developing games for it now, is because it has this thing called SGDK, the Sega Genesis development kit, which makes it easier to program for. You don't need to have a physical hardware development kit. You don't need to write assembly code. You can write it all in C, which is now it's considered quite an old language and quite a low-level language, so it might seem a bit difficult to people who just used Python before, but it's much more user-friendly than assembly language anyway. So I think the guy's called Stefan. I think he's called Steph, the guy who created SGDK. So he deserves a lot of credit for helping this whole scene, this whole movement. Because if I had to learn assembly and buy some kind of hardware to do the kit, I don't even know where I would start if I had to do it the old-fashioned way. So I think that's one of the reasons I started, and that's the reason why lots of people do Mega Drive games. And I think it's one of the reasons why consoles like the Super Nintendo hasn't seen too much in terms of home development, because I hear it's just difficult to program for at the moment, despite it being a very popular system as well.
And for the SGDK, I'll put a link to that below so anyone can check it out. But what other resources have you used or have you found helpful in getting started with this?
Yeah, so apart from SGDK, you can just you can write the game logic. It allows you to put graphics onto the screen, so it has these functions that help you. You still have to learn quite a lot, but at least it's a lot more user friendly. So that's what I use for the actual programming side of things. For the graphics, I use a program called Sprite. So it's like a pixel art app, and that's what I use to when I rip the sprites, or I create my own ones, and that's how I create the graphics. And that's pretty much it now, I think. Obviously, you guys, for the music, I understand, I think pretty much all of you use Mask, which is a music creation program that can create music for, I don't think it's just the Mega Drive, isn't it the Neo Geo 2 and the NES? And
it's a whole bunch of different systems, yeah.
A whole bunch of different systems. So I've even used a little bit of that myself, as people can hear my music in the Squid Game opening, which is just use a single channel of so it wasn't really stressing the Mega Drive hardware, but I was quite proud of it as my very first. It
fit in with the game you'd done there. So
yeah, it's playing on the Mega Drive. I can't have like great music to go with the rubbish graphics. It wouldn't quite go right. It's supposed to be kind of low tech, low effort. You had to match the whole overall feel of the game. So I think people shouldn't worry. I'm not going to be doing any Castlevania music, so I'll leave that up to you guys.
And
yeah, that's it.
For anyone that didn't know, I'll just add in here that I am actually doing some of the songs for this version of the game. You can see those on my other channel. I'll link that below, and I'll put it in a card up top there so you can find it that way. So were there any other tutorials or anything that helped you really get going since you weren't familiar with Genesis programming before this?
Oh yeah, for sure. At the beginning of this year, of 2021, I did some regular C. There's these Harvard University. I think they call it the CS50, and they teach you how to do C. And people might think, oh, Harvard, my God, that's going to be, geniuses can be really difficult. But that was they got a good series of lectures about C language, so I did those first. So I had a little bit of a foundation in C, but not. Still pretty basic, and online you can find these YouTube tutorials of 4 hours it'll teach you C, and obviously in 4 hours it doesn't teach you too much. But when I started doing SGDK, they have this documentation which is pretty old school, because you're just reading through it and you're trying to work out, okay, how the hell do I do this? So there's lots of trial and error, but there are some tutorial resources online. So for example, there's the tutorial called I think you pronounce it OSAT, is OHSAT. My fourth developer's diary, I mentioned a couple, and I linked to them in the video description, and that was a really good tutorials, because he took you through these, I think it's 3 or 4 different games. The first one was a Mega Drive version of Pong, and then the second one I think was kind of like a Space Invaders game, and I can't remember, the third was a very basic platformer, kind of an auto run platformer. And so those are very basic, but at least it gets you used to putting the stuff on the screen and putting sprites on and adding music. And so once I had that, I was ready to start my own games, my own projects. It's a good foundation.
Seems like they always throw in some type of Space Invaders clone for these example programs.
Yeah, I think it's always Pong or Space Invaders and so on. I'm going to do tutorials myself next year, and I have an idea. Maybe it's a bit ambitious, but I think it's a good level, but it's going to be quite easy to program, I think. So I'm not promising anything, but I want to do, if anyone's played Shinobi 3 before, there's 2 levels. There's one where he's on auto-scrolling levels, where he's on the horse, and another one he's on this kind of futuristic surfboard or jet ski or whatever it is, jetboard. And I think those are not too difficult for programs. So for my first kind of project that I'm going to be teaching other people after the basic tutorial series, I want to teach people how to do that. But that's almost like it's not really a shoot 'em up, but you're kind of, you're it's auto scrolling, you're on a horse and you got things coming from the right, so it's almost like a shoot 'em up in a way, in the way it works. The coding works anyway, so hopefully
it's real similar.
But even when you're doing Pong and you're doing Space Invaders, you're doing it on the Mega Drive, the Genesis. So it's actually quite exciting to see you. Even I didn't have a Mega Drive then. I only had an emulator, but even just to play it in an emulator, to know that this thing will work on the Mega Drive and that you programmed it yourself it's very exciting. It's a lot of fun. So I was really grateful for those tutorials, because otherwise, I mean, some people, they're very experienced computer programmers. They can just, they look at the documentation, they can jump straight in, and they just, but for me, I think the tutorials were definitely a big help. They kind of eased me into it, which is one of the reasons why I want to do some tutorials too. I think the more, there's not enough resources for beginners, and so I want to create and add some of my own. And apart from the tutorials, some people, they've create their own games and they put some of the code online, so that's pretty tough there, especially for a relatively inexperienced programmer like myself. But you have to read through all these hundreds of lines of code and say, okay, what did they do there? But and you try and learn from what they've written, and you're trying to decode, or why is this here, why is that there? But I think that's pretty a valuable experience. It's difficult, it's a steep learning curve if you do it that way, but I think it's very valuable too. You learn a lot from other people's code and what they've written and so on.
Yeah, definitely. And for anyone who's interested in doing this and has never tried any of this stuff before, you really do get a big sense of accomplishment the first time that you see your own work up and running either on real hardware or an emulator. It's the same, not just for the programming, but even for doing stuff like the music. The first time I did some where I saw it on an emulator running, I'm like, oh, that sounds just like what I did. That's great. Like I didn't think it would be that easy,
Even just putting a sprite on the screen is an achievement. It's like putting card on the screen for the first time or something like that. It's like, oh wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. So let's jump into Symphony of the Night itself a little bit here. What made you decide to tackle that game specifically?
Well, after I did some of the tutorials and had a look at some of the code that was online, I thought, okay, I'm ready to do my little project now. And the first one I did was the GG Shinobi project. So I started messing about with that, and so I thought, okay, with that game, it's an 8-bit game. So an 8-bit game should be very easy to port to a 16-bit system. It shouldn't be too much of a challenge if it works on the Game Gear. Even if I write really bad code, it should work on the Mega Drive, okay? And I thought, okay, the sprites in GG Shinobi are similar to the Revenge of Shinobi one, so maybe I can use that instead. And then I got the idea to, upgrade all of the graphics and then try and upgrade the music and so on. And so I was doing that for about a month or so, and that put my head in the space of, okay, take 8-bit games and upgrade them to 16-bit. So if I was thinking about which other 8-bit Game Gear Master System games could do with a 16-bit upgrade, I thought, how about Master of Darkness? But then I thought, okay, I'm already doing an 8-bit upgrade in GG Shinobi, so okay, what game's similar to Master of Darkness? Maybe instead of taking an 8-bit one and upgrading it to a 16-bit game, I can go the opposite way and take a 32-bit game and kind of demake it for the 16-bit. So I was already thinking about Master of Darkness, and I thought, okay, Master of Darkness is kind of, I wouldn't call it a rip-off of, I don't know if you call it rip-off of
Castlevania, very much Castlevania.
So. But it's a pretty good rip-off as far as rip-offs go, but then I just thought, CastleVania Symphony of the Night just kind of popped into my head, and first I would say, okay, is this even possible? And so I think I found the Alucard sprite online, and I downloaded it. I thought, okay, how many colors is this? And it wasn't too bad. I think it was 18 or something, or maybe 20. So okay, I can take away 5. If I take away 5 colors, does it still look okay, or is it going to look like absolute rubbish, absolute garbage? And thankfully that looked okay. And I said, okay, just put the sprite on, and then maybe I try some animations. And how many animations? So okay, let's make him run. And okay, can I try the background for the first part of the first level, the outside the castle, and how's that going to look? And that was a lot more colors, so that took a lot more work, but it was just a step by step. So okay, can I add this? Can I add this enemy? Can I do this? Because at that time I didn't know if it's even possible to convert. Did the Mega Drive handle it? But as I did it step by step and adding more and more elements, I started to realize, okay, this might be possible.
I think it's pretty hilarious that you went from Master of Darkness to Symphony of the Night.
I'm sure there's
that was a great starting point.
Right. I'm sure there's someone listening right now who's just slamming their fist on the table and said,
"Why couldn't it have been Master of Darkness?
Why could it have been Master of Darkness? He's gonna dislike all the videos, and you could have done that. You're wasting your life.
Symphony of the Night's already great. I need a good version of Master of Darkness."
For sure. Why make a demake of Symphony of the Night when you can upgrade Master of Darkness? And,
yep.
I wouldn't mind doing that in the future, maybe, but I'm kind of busy right now. But it's a good. It's Master of Darkness.
Well, I think you should do it, because clearly you've just disappointed the entire internet.
Okay, I'm making the announcement now. The Symphony of the Night project is cancelled. Sorry I know you pulled off ever doing the music into it and so on, so I have to apologize to you as well.
All right.
But I think Master of Darkness is the future.
That's right. I have something to put in the thumbnail now. Symphony of the Night project cancelled.
Are you willing to do the music for Master of Darkness? You want to do a track or two? Or?
Sure, why not? But anyway, so for Symphony of the Night, pretty big conversion, going from a very open and lengthy game on the PlayStation and Saturn down to a much more limited cartridge, since we're doing regular Genesis versus, say, a Sega CD. First question I have on that front is, well, let's start with this one first. Why Genesis instead of Sega CD, which I'm sure you have been asked quite a few times at this point?
Yeah, sure. That one always comes up, and I can understand why, because one's an add-on to the other. So it seems naturally, it's a natural thing to us. Oh, isn't that quite simple? Can't you just do, if you're doing a Mega Drive, isn't it just simple? Maybe you flick a switch and it can run on the Mega CD instead. And unfortunately, it's not quite so simple. I think maybe back in the day it was simple. You got unfortunately the Mega CD, the Sega CD, got lots of low quality, low effort. I won't say low quality, but lots of low effort ports. They'll just take a Mega Drive game and add some CD music and call it a day and say, okay, that's done. And I think at the time they both used the same processor, but the Mega CD one's a bit faster. So it was probably quite easy just to alter the code. But as I mentioned before, what makes the Mega Drive so relatively easy to develop for now is the SGDK, the development kit, and was written in C. And unfortunately, that doesn't cover the Mega CD as yet. Hopefully at some point in the future it will do, but I'm not sure. That's as much an if question as a when. So but unless that happens, then it's just going to be a lot more difficult to program it for the Mega CD. It's not as easy as people think it is, unfortunately. Otherwise I would, because I had a Mega CD, so if I could do that, then it would have been a Mega CD game for sure.
Yep, and still one of my favorite systems. I love a lot of the Sega CD games. So,
and it was very much underutilized as well. I think it deserved to have that kind of. It should have had maybe a Rondo of Blood ports, and it
was extremely underutilized. There are a lot of great games for it that I think fly under the radar that people don't often speak about. But on the flip side, there was a lot of power in that hardware that was basically unused. Very few things actually pushed it.
I would like to use the processor 50% faster, so that I'm sure that will come in useful in some circumstances. I haven't experienced any slowdown so far, but I'm sure once the sprites start flying and so on, because even Castlevania Bloodlines has quite a lot of slowdown in the boss fights, so I'm sure I'm going to counter it sooner or later once I start putting lots of stuff on the screen. So the Mega CD will help a lot in that regard, and plus you've got the the scaling effect, so I could take a sprite and twist it and scale it. I'm thinking of. I think it's in the Royal Chapel. You have this beautiful area where you have these stained glass windows and light shining through, and that would still be hard to do on a Mega CD. But the enemy you face there is kind of like all these swords together. It's kind of like I'm not sure what you call it, like a poltergeist with all these swords, and they're spinning around. And I think it couldn't be as good as the PlayStation version, but you could do like a nice Mega CD version. You take the sprite and just spin it around without any problem at all. And I'm not sure how we do that with the Mega Drive. It's going to be a very tough one. And even for the music, I mean, even without I like the fact that we're having chiptune music instead of the CD. So I think it makes the version more unique. So even if I were to do a Mega CD version, I think I like to keep the chiptune music, but maybe add. I believe the Mega CD has extra sound chips. I think it's PCM channels or more samples, and so I'm sure if you guys could get your hands, if Deflamask allowed you to do that, and you could just add a few more samples, I'm sure that would help a lot in producing great music for it too.
Yeah, it's not set up for doing Sega CD or its PCM chip. I don't know if there's anything out there right now that does. If anybody does know about that, please feel free in the comments to let us know. I'm sure we'd all be interested.
No, I'm just, as I was saying, I was talking about how much more difficult it is to program for the Mega CD at the moment than it is for the Mega Drive because of SGDK, and there's kind of reflected in Deflamask, where Deflamask makes it relatively, well, I wouldn't say easy, because I certainly don't find it easy when I'm trying to write a song with Deflamask, but for you guys, once you're used to it, I'm sure it's quite used to the process, and it becomes quite easy. Where if you, for example, if you wanted to write a Mega CD, a tune, a non-CD one on the actual sound chip, that would be quite difficult. You're gonna have to maybe you have to create your own tool set, or God knows what you have to do.
Yeah, I don't even know what it would take right now. I don't know if Sega had anything that was good for supporting that even back in the day, since hardly anything actually used the PCM chip for music. The only games I can think of that actually used the PCM chip for music were Lunar, Eternal Blue, and Sylphid. There may be others, but those are the ones that I know of off the top of my head.
I think Sonic CD too. I think that some of the past music, I think that was a lot.
Oh yeah, I think some of that might have
the sound chip, and that's very unfortunate, because I would love to do a Mega CD one, but it's just is as it is. It can't be helped.
So just to sum up, there are no real programming tools available, for homebrew programming, that support the Sega/Mega CD at this time. Regarding the CD music part, I'll just also add that for the original PlayStation and Saturn version of Symphony of the Night, technically it doesn't even use Redbook audio. It's smaller, it's compressed in a way, so I'm not even sure that the Sega/Mega CD would be able to decode that in real time. Just throwing that out there. So even if you were able to use, Redbook audio versions of that soundtrack, they definitely would not fit on a single CD for a Sega CD version.
That's good. I'm sure they're going to say, he's only saying that because he wants people to listen to his music. He doesn't want people to put the CD music on, and all kind of conspiracies.
And if I get that, I will respond, that is it exactly. Oh my God, you found me out.
But I think the feedback to the music's been really positive so far. Everyone seems to be loving it, and so I was really pleased. I didn't when you first started. I wasn't sure how some of the orchestral ones were going to come out, but they came out so good. I couldn't believe it. I mean, the first one, like the Dracula's Castle, I think that sounds a bit more like a track that could be done on a Mega Drive. But the rest of them are really, with the violins and all kind of strings, is really okay. How are they going to do this? And especially when you said you're going to take some of the hard ones on straight away, I thought, oh well. Were you confident at the begin with? Did you know you could do it, or was it just you really wanted to try? Or
well, let me just say, when I started it, I wasn't sure how it was going to come out either, so we were in the same boat there. I thought I could do something that sounded pretty decent for sure. I wanted to get as close as possible to that style of music using the Genesis/Mega Drive sound chip, because you didn't really hear much that was in that style during its commercial lifetime. I'd say there's hardly anything that sounded orchestral when it came to Genesis chiptunes back then. And I was sure that it was capable of it, so I wanted to see what I could do myself, and I just hoped that it would sound alright in the end.
It sounds great. I mean, it must be difficult. Sometimes you have to make a decision to say, okay, you're going to stick very closely to the original, or when do you divert away for the sake of making it? We have a similar one with the graphics as well. When you're converting the graphics, you say, okay, do I try and make this more its own unique thing, or will I try and stick as much to the original as possible? I mean, I'm a bit more. I tried as much, but sometimes it doesn't look good when you try and stick to the original, and sometimes you need to branch off. And I guess it's the same with the music as well. Yeah,
it's very similar. I've tried my best to stick as closely as possible with the hardware to that original, but there are some times where there are a few things you just have to let go. And it can be painful, and you just have to decide what can you cut while maintaining the spirit of the original as closely as possible. And I'm sure with the graphics, it's very much the same story, right?
Yeah, for sure. You have to say, okay, I have to get rid of this, especially with some of the backgrounds, because they don't fit into VRAM. There are too many unique tiles, so you have to say, okay, what am I going to cut from the background? Then you have all these beautifully drawn backgrounds, all these really exquisite details of statues and so on. You think, okay, it's gone. You have a little cry and but then it's carry on. So
yeah, and you know what? Let's come back to that in just a minute. The version of Symphony of the Night that you're doing this demake of for the Genesis, it's not going to be the same big open structure as the original game. You've decided to break it down into levels with the gameplay style and assets and everything from the original version. Why did you decide to go that route?
I think the idea pretty much came to me straight away. As soon as I decided to do a Symphony of the Night port to the Mega Drive, then the idea just came straight into my head. I think the main reason is, even if I know that there are people out there who really love the Mega Drive so much that, you know, if I managed to do a close port, you know, I managed to do one of the original game that followed the original game very, very precisely, maybe they'd even prefer to play the Mega Drive version because they just love the way it looks, it sounds, they like to play the stuff on that console. But I think for most people, and you know, the Mega Drive version is never going to be as good as the PlayStation one, so it's always going to be in its shadows. So I didn't want to create something an exact copy, because I wouldn't say it would have been pointless, but it would have been not as meaningful to me to just recreate the game. But I thought if I did it as a more traditional, semi-linear Castlevania, 16-bit Castlevania platform game, it would add a different experience. So even if you love the PlayStation version, you play that a lot, and they're not really directly competing against each other. They're two different things. They're using a lot of the same similar graphics, and it's the same basic game background and story and so on. But it's a slightly different experience, and so it's rather competing head to head with the PlayStation original. I thought I'd use the original concepts and graphics and music and so on and gameplay to create something unique, something new.
So aside from breaking the game down into levels just to make it different and a different experience from the PlayStation and Saturn versions, did any of the technical limitations of the Genesis/Mega Drive play into your decision to make it level-based instead of a continuous thing?
So, well, I think the main reason for breaking it into separate levels and having it as a linear experience was just because I wanted to create something new. So I think that was the main reason for doing it, just to be able to create something new. But technically, it would be very difficult to try and fit that huge game onto a 4 megabyte cartridge. I'm not sure how big the game is on the PlayStation side, how big the file is on the CD, but I'm sure it's a lot bigger than 4 megabytes.
Yeah, it's about 560 megabytes.
Oh, I think the CD that's probably maxing out the CD even, isn't it? I think CDs are only about 500 megabytes or so.
For PlayStation games, they were close to 700. Sony, actually, their format allowed for slightly more space than standard CDs.
I mean, nowadays you have some games, for example, Demons of Asterberg is 16 megabytes. So I believe they use some kind of bank switching technology. SGDK supports that, so you can do it within the program, so that'll be an option too. But I mean, at the moment, I think it's such a big project that to do, there's so many different levels and so on, and it's such a big thing to convert this thing. I think to have a more achievable short-term goals is a good thing. So first of all, I just want to take a 4 megabyte cart and say, okay, theoretical 4 megabyte cart and ROMs. Okay, what can we fit on this? How many levels can we fit onto it? We try and create a game out of that, because even Bloodlines, I think, was only 1 megabyte. So yeah, we have 4 times as much storage as that. So, and they managed to fit, I think it's 5 or 6 levels onto
6 levels.
It's it's a pretty substantial game. It has 2 characters, 6 levels. The characters are, they're not just palette swaps. The sprite swaps actually have different gameplay, slightly different paths too. So I think that's what we're going to aim to do. And I mean, the Mega Drive doesn't have too many Metroidvania style games. So I can even think
not
of,
many at all.
Monster, what's it called? Monster World, Wonder Boy and
Monster
World.
And Monster World. Yeah,
and that's one of them. And can't really honestly think of too many more. There was the one with the girl. I think that's Monster World 4, but that was kind of separate linear dungeons, but it had this kind of slightly Metroidvania-ish hub world. Where
I was going to say that one's actually that one's a lot more linear than the game that had preceded it. Actually, so it's kind of strange.
Yeah, that's a real mix, because you have to do the dungeons in certain orders, but then you go back to the hub world, and the hub world you can find out new things if you have different abilities, almost like a Metroidvania. So it's not quite the same. So it's definitely more linear than the previous game. So. And just as a programming challenge, it'll be fun to find out, okay, how do you make a Metroidvania? Because I think lots of people will be interested in doing that. And especially if in the future, when I do the tutorials, I think it'd be good to teach people how to do it. I I don't think it's too difficult from a programming perspective, and so to begin with, I think I just want to stick to the linear plan and give a new experience in the future. And I'm talking about years into the future. Maybe it'll be good to try out some Castlevania, Metroidvania-ish elements and try to find locked doors and so on. And maybe it'll be a fun challenge to say, okay, how much of the castle could be reproduced as a Metroidvania in 4 megabytes or 16 megabyte cards and so on, and just see what we can do. So as I said, when I first started SGDK and started on this project, it was more experimental. Okay, can I put Alucard on the screen? Can I put background on the screen? Next, okay, can I create a level, which I did recently? Okay, I put together a level as janky and unstable as it is, and okay, next time can I 4 levels together and bosses and so on and create a game. And so in the future it may evolve to a more Metroidvania experience. Maybe it'd be fun if I do that, to maybe mix the castle up a bit, so it's not the exact same layouts in the PlayStation 1, but that will make it a bit more interesting to play as well. And I think Maria or Alucard, they say that the castle is like an agent of chaos and is kind of changes, and obviously it changes when it turns upside down halfway through. Sorry for that spoiler for people who haven't played the game, but I think people watching this probably...
Well, it's old enough, I think we're okay at this point.
You never know. I'm sure we're going to get at least one angry commenter saying we spoiled it for them. But so it might be fun just to, if I do go the Metroidvania route eventually in the future, to mix them up and change the order of the rooms around. It could be a lot of fun to do that.
Which actually, one of my friends asked me to ask if you were thinking about doing something like that. Maybe adding hidden rooms, and also how you were going to implement the way different items affect your movement and everything. Are you going to incorporate that into this, since it doesn't have the big open design of the original? Things like maybe adding a double jump, stuff like that.
I think as with any project, when you're working with a beloved game, a beloved franchise, you have to, even an unofficial fan-made one like this, you have to be very, very, very careful. You have to respect the original. So I want it to be true to the spirit of the original, but I think it'd be fun just to change things around a bit. So I've been thinking a bit about the next level, because the entrance level is very similar in layout to the original, because it's just even in the original it's very kind of linear and pretty straightforward. But once we get to the next level, the alchemy lab, things are going to change quite a bit. And I thought, okay, because they've got some secrets where you can go down to a room, and I think, should I keep them in the same place, or should I move them around a bit? Because maybe it'd be fun to move them around, but maybe people prefer if they could find things in the same place. It'd be like a reward for knowing the original game. And
I would say, why not try and mix both of those things in? Have some things there for the people that played the original, and then put a few other things in there that'll be new to everybody.
Even in the entrance level, you can see I think the part where it starts to depart a bit more is when you go up, you pass the bit where you meet death, and you go up this kind of staircase, you jump up, and then you go to the left, and then you start backtracking yourself a bit, and you're in this the gargoyles are the little kind of bridge platform. And in the original there's a little hole where you can go down. If you fall down it, then you can go to a little secret area. And because it was mine's going to be more of a linear game, if I left the hole, then people would just die. And I was going to leave the hole in, but I thought that's a bit of a dick move to leave a hole, and it might be quite fun, but I think it might be frustrating as well. It's like, what the hell are you doing?
Let's see what's down here.
So it's like, I know this game. I'm gonna jump down. I think it's just a heart or something power up. I can't remember exactly what's down there, but
yeah, actually, I only know this because I was watching a little bit of footage from someone playing the original today, and that is a heart max up.
Yeah, so it's not great. So I thought, okay, if I better cover up that hole, because I think it's just going to annoy people more than. So that's going to be a balance to say, okay, I want to change this thing. If I want to change it up, is this going to annoy people, or are people going to find this fun and fresh and interesting? So I'm gonna have to always think about that and do some testing and just try it out with people. I know Byron's a big fan of the game, so I'll send him some ROMs and use him as a bit of a test dummy and see if he likes it, or if he says, this is terrible. And as the game progresses, hopefully I'll be able to share some better versions, some beta versions, some ROMs and so on, so people can play about and people can have some kind of a little bit of an input as well. And so if everyone's, if 90% of people say, this is terrible, don't do this, then I'll change it. But obviously you can't please everyone. But
definitely not.
If there's an obvious, a vast majority against some kind of change that I made, then I say, okay, I'll scrap that, no problem. But as regards to the power-ups and so on, so to be honest, when I was playing Symphony of the Night, I've never really used the kind of the, what do you call it, the magic, like the hellfire and the metamorphosis and so on. But it's Pyron. He's a big fan of those, and when he sent the new sprite sheets for Alucard, he included lots of the magic stuff. So I know he's a big fan, and so I think we are going to include those. I think it'll be. I want to make it, although I said it's going to be more of a linear experience, I want to try and mess about with that a little bit, so it's not, even though it's level by level, maybe there are some alternate paths and so on. I haven't quite
I was going to say branching paths would probably work out good in that.
Yeah, so some branching paths. I know Rondo of Blood has, even the Super Nintendo version has some kind, if you fall down a certain pace, you don't actually die, you might just fall to a different level. And so
or you can pick up keys and carry them around with you for a long time and then unlock a door to go to a different area in a few places.
So it might be fun to have that and to hide some power-ups some places. And I don't want to spoil too much because I have some nice ideas, so I like to spring a surprise on people. So hopefully we want to kind of reward people rather than punishing them. So that's why I covered up the hole at the beginning, and hopefully it'll be stuff like, okay, this is a secret room, and maybe there was something in the original game that it's not exactly the same, but it kind of hints at it. So if you play the original, you have a certain advantage where you can work, okay, maybe I can check here, and you get rewarded for that. And so I'm trying to do, because that's one of the things that makes it fun to do a different kind of game design, because then you have to think of game design stuff rather than just doing a straight copy of the castle. So it's much more creative that way for me as the designer as well. It's much more fun to think, okay, how can I change this up without frustrating people, to do it that's an enjoyable game. How do you handle difficulty? Because one of the things that I think the original Symphony of the Night, it's hard with a Metroidvania because you can go wherever you want, so sometimes you find yourself in a place of the castle where you're probably not supposed to be, and you just get destroyed by some regular enemy, and sometimes you do it in a certain way where you get super powerful and it becomes very easy, whereas in a linear platform game you can control the difficulty progression a lot more carefully, a lot better. So I think it's a lot more interesting project for me to do, and hopefully people, because the PlayStation version is always going to be there, the Saturn version is always going to be there, so hopefully people will. I think most people are on board. I expected to get a bit more pushback on the idea of doing it as a linear game, and a few people say, "Oh, I love the exploration, the Metroidvania style of it." But I think most people seem to be pretty on board with that. So I just have to make sure that it's fun to play, so that they stay on board with the idea as well.
And do you think that you would include, I mean, there are a lot of different armors and items and all that stuff in Symphony of the Night. Would you incorporate all that stuff in some fashion? Or enemies still going to drop them in your plans? Are you going to find them maybe behind breakable walls? Like, what's the plan for that right now?
I've thought about that, and I actually thought about maybe having a save system. So if you discover an item in one playthrough of the game, you get to use it in the next playthrough. So it kind of saves that you've discovered this item, so when you play it next time, maybe Alucard has a different cloak or a different weapon, and I'm not sure how many weapons we can include. I know the original had, I don't think I actually used a lot of the items. There were so many of them.
There's a lot.
He has deep pockets, Alucard. I'm not sure how he carried it all around with him. But
it's magic. It's the magic of the castle.
Even the librarian, the stuff that he sold, I didn't use a lot of it. But I think if we have, I don't want to put a number on it, but we have a certain number of weapons and a certain number of maybe cloaks, and maybe, I'm not sure of the magic you can do from the beginning, or whether you can discover the magic and you find a way, and it saves that it knows that you discover the magic, so the next game you can use it. And we have lots of little kind of ideas, and as we create the game, I'm sure that we'll test some things out, because sometimes something sounds good in your head, but maybe it won't be fun to play, because ultimately it's a game, so it needs to be fun to play as well.
Yep, definitely. And with it going more in the line of a linear gameplay progression style, are you still going to allow for people to walk back and forth within the levels, or is it going to mainly be like you're always pushing forward, in whatever direction that happens to be?
I think they'll be always pushing forward, because I'm not sure there'll be a point about going a point to travel back, unless you want to maybe find more secrets. But I think I'll just do it so, just like Bloodlines or Super Castlevania 4, where you always have to go forward. And as I said, maybe in the future, once I've got the code written for Alucard's attack movements and enemy AI, and once we've got all the graphics in and the music in, shouldn't be too difficult to rearrange the level design. So once you've got that going for the linear style of game, maybe it wouldn't be. Maybe I regret saying this now because people are going to think it's easy, but from my perspective now, it doesn't seem like it would be very difficult to be able to take all the assets you have and just rearrange it and create a kind of Metroidvania style. So I think the focus. I don't want to get a sense of mission creep where you're adding new stuff and new ideas. So I want to keep things. I always like to take things step by step, as you've seen. You're just doing maybe one single area, one single enemy, and one single level. So I'm going to continue in that fashion, just adding a bit more. So now I've got one level out of the way, and maybe I just want to do maybe one boss fight and other things, and obviously rewrite the code so it's better. And after that, the next target will be a 4 megabytes ROM, and just create a game, see what kind of game we can create out of that. And then that's a pretty medium term goal too. That could take a while, but once that's done, then we say, okay, after that maybe we can create an 8 megabyte ROM, or maybe we can make it less linear, or we can do some other things. So this will be a very long project. This is a learning experience. It's something that's gonna, I mean, I'm really enjoying working on it, so this will be something that I'll be doing as a hobby for a long time. We keep adding new levels, new stuff. We might end up with several different ROMs with different. It's like in the Super Nintendo, you had Final Fight, you had Final Fights and Final Fight Guy. And obviously that was a little bit lame because it was just the same game with the same missing level, but just one character switched over too. So that was a bit of a lazy one. So I hope we do something more interesting than that. But maybe there'll be like Symphony of the Night, Alucard, and Symphony of Maria, and they have.
You should just do Symphony of the Night Guy ROMs. And just replace Alucard with Guy.
That would be so I think he got hard done by being left out like that. So maybe he deserves to be on mixed Capcom with Konami. It might be quite fun.
There you go. I should keep this out, and you could do it as an April Fool's prank.
Yeah. So we're I think people have asked too if they can play. Would it be possible to play Maria in Alucard's levels? So that shouldn't be too difficult to implement. You just kind of swap them over, and it should be pretty easy. So I said there'll probably be like. Who knows, there'll be multiple versions. I'm talking a lot about the future, but we take things one step at a time.
So, back to the origins, maybe, of you getting involved with Genesis programming, and then, advancing to where you are right now in your Symphony of the Night demake. Is there anything that's been particularly surprising, well, let's say either harder or easier to do than you would have expected with the Genesis hardware?
In terms of easier, I think the whole Symphony of the Night project, really, because when I first started, I thought maybe this is going to be impossible. This is a 32-bit game, and is this even possible? But most of the backgrounds and sprites, they fit into the VRAM, into the system quite well. I said, at the moment I haven't experienced any slowdown just yet, so I don't want to say that too. Maybe the next video you'll see lots of slowdown, I don't know. But so I've been quite impressed. I mean, the reason I chose it, there were some 32-bit games which would be just impossible to convert. But not even talking about the 3D ones, but some of the 2D ones, there's just too many sprites on the screen, and it'd be too crazy. And while Symphony of the Night was going to need to be cut back quite a lot, is the main beat of the game can definitely be done in the Mega Drive. So I was quite impressed. It doesn't say much for something to do with my coding skills, which are still pretty limited at the moment. It's more to do with the Mega Drive hardware itself, whereas actually, despite being, I think it was released in 1988 in Japan to begin with, that's a good job. It's just made for these kind of 2D games, and although we need to kind of have as many layers of background layers as the PlayStation or Saturn versions, have ways to kind of fake that and do little tricks, and recently with the video to do with shadow and highlight and transparencies, we can do some things where we can kind of fake it. It's not going to look as good as the PlayStation one, but in parts maybe it looks better than the Saturn one. I dare say in some, but that's not too difficult. There's not this on the Saturn, or even on the developers at the time. I think it was just a rushed project.
It's okay. You can diss those Saturn developers at that time, because the Saturn was more than capable of handling an absolutely perfect conversion of Symphony of the Night. I mean, that thing was built for 2D, first and foremost, and they just slapped together a version that's not bad, but was definitely not programmed with the strengths of the system in mind.
Some lots of strange decisions about how they did stuff and why they did stuff and what layers they used for what.
Yeah,
I won't get too much into the Saturn hardware, but some of the decisions seem a bit strange, and luckily there's a mod team who are doing a great job just fixing some things and adding some things, and hopefully one day it'll be great. It'll be as good as the PlayStation version.
Yeah, I haven't tried it yet, but I've watched some playthroughs of some of the newer mods that are out there, and it's much more impressive than the original release.
Yeah, for sure. Just get rid of I think the slowdowns are stuff that needs to go most of all, because slowdown, I mean, I'm trying to avoid that in this game too. I can't guarantee there won't be any slowdown. Even in Bloodlines, which was made by one of Konami's top teams, even in some boss fights, some certain areas, there was some slowdown there. So I'm not sure if I can avoid it completely, but in regular gameplay, I want to keep a smooth 60 and maybe some big boss fights where there's lots of special effects and fires going on. That's going to be slowed down a little bit. And actually, when I was a kid, I thought the slowdown was a deliberate choice. Like when Sonic lost his rings, I thought it was like a dramatic slow motion effect. And the same with Castlevania, or the same with the shoot 'em ups. I thought they were giving you a chance to react, and they slow things down so you can for a shoot 'em up, some kind of shmup, you can see where the bullets
there are still people who will argue that some of the developers did do that on purpose, where they designed those games in certain ways where they knew there would be slowdown at this point, so it would give the player more of a fighting chance. Now, I don't know how true that is, because I haven't seen any developer interviews where they specifically addressed that and said, yes, we did this knowing there would be slowdown, but I would love to find out for sure someday. I mean, especially if we're talking about something like Thunder Force 4 on the Genesis, or Lightning Force as it was called here. I mean, that game has some of the worst slowdown on the system ever. I would love to know if any of that was deliberate. My guess would be no. So,
I should probably cover for myself and say if there's any slowdown in CastleVania Symphony Night,
you did it on purpose.
Yes. It's like a genius programming move. It's not like bad coding skills. Is a deliberate choice, so you can't criticize it. It's to give the player a chance.
Yes, he wanted it to be easier for you to deal with those difficult boss encounters.
Sure.
So is there anything that you run into that you found to be more difficult than you expected?
More difficult? I'm trying to think. There are lots of things. I think I just forget the pain. I work for it, and especially when you're doing computer programming, I think you need to embrace the pain. You need to just keep going through it, because you're gonna when you're writing lots of code. I think recently doing that first level, the version of the first level is just you start to put little bits together in. So for example, I just put a sprite on the screen, maybe create some anime AI, but it's when you start putting everything together, like the AI, the player movement, the controls, the animation, the level collision, and then you're stacking section upon section upon section, and starting the music. It becomes this huge, enormous Frankenstein monster of a file, and that first level code now has thousands and thousands of lines, and then when you want to change one single thing and you end up breaking something else, and you think, okay, where the hell is it? Where do I find it? And you go to one function which leads to another function which leads to another function, and even though you wrote it yourself, when I was writing it myself, I didn't write any notes, because of I don't need to. I'm doing this myself. It's a one-person job, but sometimes you look at some code and think, what's this for? Why did I do this?
Yeah.
And so
I feel your pain there, exactly. It's one of those things that you don't really understand until you experience it for yourself. And for me, I've done programming. Even if you put in good remarks sometimes, you can miss something and what the meaning of something is at some point. They can really snowball and make that difficult to find the exact bug you're looking for later on.
Definitely got a newfound respect for computer programmers now, because I'm just doing this, what now is a relatively small project compared to what other people are doing on computer program. It's just one single person. I'm doing it myself, and even that's quite confusing if you're creating these huge programs with multinational companies with hundreds of programmers contributing and maintaining it. That must be an absolute nightmare. I can't even imagine how you organize that, what the project manager has to go through, what you have to go through as a coder. And so I mean, even now at the end of the video before that, when I did the first level, I said, okay, I need to take a step back and go back to because when I was studying C before, I looked at these, they say, okay, you should split it into a different file and put this function in a different file and do this and that. And I thought, well, why do you need to do that? This is simple. Just keep it in the same file. I can do this. I don't need to take any notices of that. But now I kind of regret it. I'm going through it. Okay, I need to go back to the books again. And I realize now that what they're saying was true. It was very wise advice. And I need to go back. I need to start using these more sophisticated data structures. I need to start using more pointers and structs and all these other other data types, and instead of just using these regular ones, because okay, now I realize why these are useful. When before I thought, okay, this is pointless, it just unnecessarily complicates things.
Yep, 100%. I understand that.
That was what was harder for me. I think that's what that's a very new revelation.
That is definitely a beginner trap when you're starting with any programming or dealing anything, I guess, with these old systems. You can look at something that seems like it's really easy to do at first, and someone might tell you or say it's better to do it a different way, and just like, oh no, this works, I'm just going to keep doing it this way. And then you will hit that brick wall where doing it your way is clearly not the right way to do it, and you have to go back and just start something completely over. So I think we all run into that, especially in programming, when you're new to things.
No, I mean, even now I feel the temptation, because I've got this code in place, as janky and as unstable as it is, and Parents already sent me the tile set for the next level for the alchemy lab, and I just was okay, maybe I should just put off the C studying a bit and just use my old code and just put in the alchemy lab stuff. So then I can get a second level up and running, and that's really exciting. It's more exciting than the prospect of hitting the C programming books again. But
yes,
okay, I need to maybe I'll do like a quick. Maybe I could do that in the weekend. So maybe I'll have fun with that. But I really need to. I think this is a good time to take a little bit of a step back and just go through the books, and ultimately it'll benefit the project in the long term. So you have to make a short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain.
So I was actually kind of surprised that you would put out a new video. Well, I think it went up just today as I'm speaking to you here, because I expected you had already sort of backed off and started doing that a little bit. So is your plan not to mainly develop the game, but just sort of mess around a little bit while you're doing your further study on the C language?
That was a really fun video to do about the shadow and highlights, because my last video was about getting everything I'd learned before and putting it together into one single level. So it wasn't really learning any new technique. It was just getting everything to working together, and that was a big challenge. So when I went back and studied the shadow and highlight stuff, that was like going back to the beginning of my SGD case studies. It was like just exploring and experimenting. It's just a very small program, a very small file. I didn't need to use any of my previous stuff. I could start completely afresh, and so I'm going to continue to do stuff like that when. So I want to be studying the regular C stuff, because I'm studying other computer programming stuff unrelated to Mega Drive development. But while I'm doing that, I can do these little kind of tests and experiments. So I still need to do some more shadow and highlight stuff, but with the background instead of the sprites next time. And I want to do some palette stuff, for example, when you create water effects. So Sonic 2 or even Sonic 1, actually, the infamous drowning sequence, and where actually that's Sonic 2, isn't it? When the second one, the chemical plant zone, where the purple water's rising and rising. And some people think that's shadow and highlight, but that's just a palette swap halfway down the screen. But actually, I don't know how to do that yet. So that's another new thing I need to learn how to do. And so there are lots of little kind of techniques I can do, little experiments I can do in the meantime. So I should be able to keep some videos coming in the next 2, 3, 4 months, and just because there's some stuff I want to take a break from the C program every now and again, just have a bit of fun and do these little almost like mini projects, but they kind of give you ideas of how the project could be in the future. So a lot of the stuff I covered in the shadow and highlight stuff, like the Skull Lord and all these other characters, they're not going to appear until much later in the game, but it was still a lot of fun just to explore the possibilities, and people contributed. They left messages to say, okay, maybe you can use it for this and for that, and so it drives a lot of creativity. But people got lots of great ideas of what to do, and it's a nice little break from the longer the stuff like creating another level and rewriting my whole code, which is going to take quite a long time.
Yeah, I definitely was interested in seeing that today, especially, with the big skull and everything. I thought that looked pretty good. So that was an interesting use of that to see what kind of results you could get. You're talking about people being upset because they're like, oh, you could do all this in the hardware on the Super Nintendo or the Saturn or whatever. Like, who cares about that? You're not making it for those systems. It's more of a challenge to see what you can do on something that doesn't support that stuff in the hardware than something that just gives you a function to turn on to enable it.
I mean, I could do ray tracing on the PS5, I'm sure, or the Xbox Series X, and I don't mind. Some people are just not into it. They say, what's the point of doing a demake at all? What's the point of playing these old systems? I'm sure people watching your channel and people watching mine, we're kind of preaching to the choir, and
probably.
I don't judge anyone. I can understand that people can say, I want to get into the modern stuff only. Why even the PS4 is kind of gone now. Why would you pay the PS4 when you got the PS5? And so I can understand it. I have no animosity towards those people. I think everyone has their own little niche, and for me, this is just a lot of fun. I think, previous years I've really enjoyed seeing people do stuff on the Mega Drive. I've always been very impressed with it. It's like, oh wow, that's incredible. Even if you just put like a sprite on the Mega Drive, of wow, that's amazing, and so on. So I'm really happy. It's a really nice new hobby. It's one of the benefits, the few benefits that come from this whole COVID thing. I think without it, I probably wouldn't have had the time to start this. It would have just been an idea in my head of something I would maybe like to do at some point, some indefinite point in the future. So it's like when you're a kid, when you're bored, and sometimes when you're bored, that can spur a kind of a creativity, and it can make you do stuff. Okay, let me just try this.
Yeah, let me see what I can do with this, and if I'll be any good at it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you have the same with the music as well. People say, well, why limit yourself to 6 channels of FM synth and this master system when you can just do?
Because that's all you need. Anyone who needs more than 6 channels of FM is just some hoity-toity posh person.
Maybe there's some master system chip tune makers who are saying, why do you need a Mega Drive or Genesis for? That's terrible. You don't even need synth. You just need
there's a word for those people.
PSG.
Wrong.
I think there's always like a sweet spot. It's like a Goldilocks and the Free Bears. Is some things too much, and I think especially with the retro game development, one of the good things is giving a set of limitations, and sometimes it's fun to work within those limitations. You think if I had unlimited colors to work with, it causes procrastination. You think, okay, where do I even start with this? But when you're given the Mega Drive palette, I think it's 512 colors, and then you can only put 64 of those onto the screen. And with the music as well, you only have 6 channels. Maybe if you were given an unlimited number of channels, it would be overwhelming. So, okay, what the hell do I
Let me tell you, I would kill for 2 more FM channels on there. That's
so
something.
Sometimes, if they just made 8 rather than 6, it would have been perfect. If you had 8, maybe you'll kill for another 2 more to make it.
Oh, probably. Depending on the song that you're trying to do. One of the things I've wondered in recent years is why did they go with the YM2612 instead of a 2151? Which is what Sega had used in their arcade games, Capcom, all the other companies back in that era. So many of them used that chip, which had 8 FM channels. And while I haven't ever specifically seen them talk about this and give an answer, I think I know what it is. And that is that the 2612 has the built-in DAC. So you have your 6 channel, which can be either FM or digital audio to play your samples. Whereas the YM2151 doesn't have that. They had to include a separate DAC in all those arcade boards that use that sound chip. So that would have been an extra expense in the system where they would have had to have added another chip for the DAC, which would have raised the price. That is probably the major factor in why they didn't use it.
The answers to those questions is normally money. It's normally how much it will cost. But I think sometimes when the price is an extra $50 or $100, which was quite a lot, especially way back then. But sometimes these prices you hear they would have cost maybe an extra $4. Why don't you just do it? I would have paid an extra $5.
Yes, there are definitely things like that.
I'm not sure if that's the case with the sound processor, but I think people are going to be unhappy you're disrespecting the YM2612.
Oh, I think it's a good chip. It's just that, when there was something better and more capable, why take that step back? And I think that's the answer to that question. Because even some of the older Japanese computers used, a more advanced version of the same chip that's in the Genesis. So even though it came along later, it was using something less advanced than was in some of those old computers, like the PC-88, for example.
Who knows? I'm just speculating here, but maybe it has something to do with the backwards compatibility with the master system or something else, or who knows what kind of considerations were going on. Maybe they were just friends with a particular company. The CEO of this company was good friends or family member of this company, and so they say, okay.
I'd seen some things recently. They weren't specifically on the sound chip, but they had more to do with the video chips and the features that they had originally thought about. Because I don't know if you're aware of this, but when they were originally designing the Genesis, the plan was to include scaling and rotation like the arcade games had, and they even had the chips all set up for that. In the end, they didn't do it because that would have made the chips larger, and it would have decreased the successful yield they got when they manufactured them, which would have increased the cost of everything. So they decided to abandon that plan and just remove those chips from the system. And that's the only reason that the Genesis was released without hardware scaling and rotation.
There's always lots of debates about, okay, if you were given extra maybe $20 or on the Mega Drive hardware, what would you add? And some people say, okay, I wish they could have added just a few more colors, or other people, with you, it's probably more about the music. Why couldn't I add 2 more channels in the music? And other people, why couldn't I add
let's
more
play that game
scaling
right now. Let me bring that question to you, and we'll pose that as an interview question here. If you could have changed anything about that Genesis/Mega Drive hardware, what would it be? Well, and why?
It's perfect as it is. You can't change perfection. But, probably
no cop-out answers.
I mean, the biggest thing. The biggest thing I have to deal with now, and it's obviously I think it's the colors, especially when you're converting from the PlayStation, which I think had no real practical limit on how many colors it could display. So, I mean, just as you said before, that you would have killed for an extra 2 channels of FM synth, and I think sometimes I feel would have killed for an extra 2 colors. Sometimes you're doing a sprite. I mean, thankfully now Pyron's going to be taking responsibility for a lot of the sprite work, but especially when I was doing more of it, it's just sometimes I've got, I'm doing a sprite and I'm down to 17 colors, and I need to take 1 more color, and every color I take away is just making it look a lot worse. And if you could leave me with 1 more color, that would have been perfect. Or you just, So I think for me, it probably would have been colors. But as I said, I think you work within the limitations of the hardware as one of the attractions, and especially with the stuff Pyron's doing, I think it gives the Mega Drive its own unique look.
How about the VRAM, going back to what you were talking about earlier?
Well, that's mostly okay. I mean, sometimes I have to, cut out some details, but mostly it's just about mirroring some kind of... I mean, if you got these bricks in the background, and, PlayStation 1, there's lots of these individually crafted bricks, and don't worry too much about that, because it's just a brick. And it's probably won't... If it's something like a statue, I've done some experiments with the Royal Chapel area a few months back, and especially the big staircase they have of that, and there's got this huge staircase where you're walking up and up, and there's lots of beautiful details in the background. You have like the trees outside, and you have all these stained glass windows and statues, and so I think that might have to be simplified quite a lot from my experiments. I'm sure Pyron can do a much better job of it than I did back a few months ago. But if I remember correctly, those experiments weren't very successful. It didn't look too great, and that caused a lot of sadness having to cut a lot from that. But the early levels at least have been okay. I mean, the Alchemy Lab as well, there's lots of repeated tile sets, because I think when Konami created the game, they were half their mind was kind of in the 16-bit era. They're thinking about Wonder of Blood. Lots of the sprites came from that, and they just took like a 16-bit game and just okay, let's soup up everything. Let's dial it up to 100, and that's what they did. But at least you still got some of that 16-bit DNA in terms of how they did the tiles. They still based the graphics on tile sets and so on. So otherwise, it would have been almost impossible to convert, I think.
Going back to the original question here about what would you change, I'm going to reference the same article I mentioned before with the lead designer of the Genesis. It's online, anyone can look at it. I'll link it in the description below so everyone can see it here. He also talks about a few other things, including why the system had such a small color palette at the time it came out. So I definitely encourage everyone to check this article out and give it a look. But yeah, I think if I was only to change one thing about it, it would probably be a larger color palette also, and more on-screen colors. After that, I would say, hey, put that scaling and rotation chip back in there. And then from there, I would say something for more complex PCM music where you can manage a couple of sample channels on top of all the other things you already have. Because I think even the Genesis as it stands now, with its FM sound, if you had just 2 sample channels where you could control the tones and everything, that would have improved the music you could get out of that dramatically. Which I love the sound of the Genesis right now as it is, but a lot of hardware was already doing it back then. I mean, the Amiga came out in 1985 originally, when the Amiga 1000 was launched. We had 4 PCM sample channels on that computer back in the day. There's no reason they couldn't have had something like that on the Genesis.
I mean, when I think about things like that, I think mostly of the Mega CD, which was quite... We were talking about the Mega CD before the Sega CD, and that's quite... The fact that it was, I think if I'm correct, the actual expansion port was originally meant for some kind of floppy disk, and so then they used it for a CD.
Yeah, they talked
instead,
about that. Yeah.
And then I've read a lot about how the connection kind of throttles a lot of that comes out of the Mega CD, and it restricts how fast the frame rate of the scaling can be, and there's lots of. I said I haven't done it myself.
Yes,
so
I've read about that. I've actually asked a former Sega CD developer about that, and they said they thought that you could get scaling and rotation at higher frame rates depending on the programming on there. But I mean, I've read the exact things you're talking about here also.
I think in some ways that would have been better as a system, just like a standalone system, but with a cartridge slot. So because it had everything, it had its own processor, it had its own sound chip, it had its own pretty much everything except for a new video chip. And of course, if they had a new video chip, they could have increased the colors too, because at that point it would have been very cheap just to add a lot more colors. Even I think the Game Gear had like a large color palette, although
the Game Gear had 4096.
Oh, no, that's more than I joked a bit with Pyron that I think there are some certain, not many, but there are some parts of Symphony of the Night where the Game Gear could perhaps do a more accurate representation of say.
Oh yeah, because you have a much larger variety of colors. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, Pyron's very creative about how he does the colors. He'll just change the colors completely. But as I was trying to do it to begin with, when I had all these shades of grey in the walls and so on, I tried to. The Mega Drive only has maybe 2 or 3 shades of grey, and that's it. You have black and white, and you have maybe 2 shades of grey, and you can't really do too much. You can't really do these subtle gradations of colour that even probably the Game Gear can do. So it'll be kind of nice to do a mock-up of some of the. Obviously, there's other limitations to the Game Gear too, but so some certain aspects of the game, maybe the Game Gear could do a good job.
Yeah, there are some Game Gear games. Even though it's only shows 32 colors on screen versus 64 of the Genesis, some of them still look very close to 16-bit titles for some of the later ones that are really well done.
The Game Gear is a really nice system. I mean, even the GG Shinobi games, I think, are pretty nice looking games. And it's quite interesting. So I haven't met any situations in creating the GG Shinobi remake where the Game Gear has this color that I can't do in the Mega Drive yet. Maybe I will in the future, where I say, I need to demake this.
I think you'd be more likely to. I was gonna say, I think you'd be more likely to hit that in the second one than the first one. The original Game Gear Shinobi, I mean, it looks good, but it looks fairly simple overall, I would say, with the amount of colors and everything.
Yeah, I think they stick to primary colors mostly. It's very bright games, so I think that makes it quite easy because the Mega Drive's quite good with that. But if it did these subtle greys or other ones, it might be quite difficult. So
yeah, and the second one, it does do that a little bit more, but I don't know if it will be a problem, translating that palette from one system to the other.
Oh, well, it looks like if I do the second one, I'm gonna have to bring the 32X in to help the Mega Drive. Then I don't think it has enough power to do the Game Gear, the GG Shinobi 2. I'm gonna have to maybe I have to get the Mega CD involved as well. The Mega CD and the 32X.
Yes, the Sega CD 32X combo.
Just to make sure it's not a demake, is a proper remake rather than.
Which has exactly 2 games for it, I think, that were ever commercially released, and they're both FMV.
People ask a lot about that too, about how can you use the 32X and the Sega CD and the Mega CD together with the Mega Drive, and that's a lot. That's very complex. The more I learn from other people who are trying to work on that, the more I realize it could perhaps be quite limited in practice to do that.
It's an interesting thing to see if you can do, but I don't think it would be very practical. And there wouldn't be a lot of people with setups at home where all that stuff still works to even test it right.
Sure, so it might be possible, but you're gonna have to find someone has the programming experience and talent to do it, and also the time and the desire. And not many people have all those. I mean, some people are very interested, but they don't have the other two. They don't have the programming skills and so on. And for me personally, once I move on I like to do some maybe Mega CD stuff, but I think rather than doing this Frankenstein's monster of a combo system, I think I'd rather just do some Saturn stuff, because as complex as people say the Saturn is, at least it was designed as a single console. Actually, there's not so many bottlenecks, especially when it comes to 2D games, which are the ones I'll be most interested in doing on that.
I would love to see any Saturn development that's out there, especially with 2D stuff. If they ever get that tool made to do the Saturn music, I would love to contribute that to it.
It'd be amazing to get some good Saturn synth music and use the sound chip a bit more, and because it makes it a bit more unique than just having some kind of Red Book audio, and makes the file size smaller too, so you can have like a cartridge game rather than a CD game. And Saturn development's it's kind of really catching on now. There's lots of new tools. It's not as developed as the SGDK development kit, but at the moment there's lots of different tools, so there's not one single standard, but things are really progressing there. So I could see myself in maybe 2 or 3 years from now, and maybe doing some Saturn stuff as well. Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yep, I think everyone would definitely be interested to see that. So let's finish off with just a few fun questions. What is your favorite Genesis or Mega Drive game?
If I had to choose, it would probably be Revenge of Shinobi, because I know probably objectively speaking, maybe the third Shinobi 3 is probably the better game, and if someone's a complete newcomer, I'd probably recommend that. But for Revenge of Shinobi, it's kind of a mix of how good the game still is and also some nostalgia as well. I think it's just I think the music was great, and especially playing it, I think I probably played it first of all in probably 1990, and just the opening sequence where you have this ninja who everyone loved ninjas back in the the 90s and the 80s, and having him knock down that the opening where he gets rid of the thunderclap sound, and then he jumps in and he knocks away the what do you call it, the shuriken, or the I think they use ninja stars in the intro, and that's just an amazing kind of intro to the 16-bit era. I think that was one of the first games I owned for it. When you, after having the Master System, or even for some people in the UK, they were playing the game that the console they had before the Mega Drive was maybe the ZX Spectrum. So imagine going from that, then plugging in Revenge of Shinobi and having
that'll be a pretty big difference.
Yuzo Koshiro music come on, and these big graphics and sprites. And I just remember looking at magazine articles and looking at the sprites, and we had like an import game shop where they had it showing, but the lady there wouldn't let us play because otherwise the kids would be there all day just playing for free, and you just watch that intro again and again and again, and finally getting it yourself. I think it's probably Christmas 1990 that that's probably when I got it, and it's just an amazing game. I think it's still fun to play now, and it's lots of nostalgia for me too.
Well, that's a good game. I'm sorry to inform you that your answer is incorrect. Your favorite Genesis game is Streets of Rage 2.
That might be the second. That's probably the one that I like to play most of all now, because it's a very quick playthrough, and it's fun with co-op people, and it's just an amazing. Even I like to play the Streets of Rage remake, which they did a great job, but the vanilla Streets of Rage 2 is still such an amazing game too.
Yep, and I really like Revenge of Shinobi, so you're okay on that one. What is your favorite game system of any generation?
I think it might actually be the Sega Saturn, because again, just like Revenge of Shinobi, it's a mix of objective, it has lots of good games, and it's a very nice system, and sort of subjective stuff like nostalgia, subjective factors like nostalgia. So I remember in around 1995 going into, I think it's a Toys R Us we had in the UK, and going in there and seeing a demo of the PlayStation, and playing 3D games, home console 3D games for the first time. And I mean, I played a couple in the arcade, like Virtua Fighter and Virtua Racing, and I think you already knew that the arcades were always well ahead, so that was kind of a different realm, a different universe. But to know you're about to be able to play these games at home was pretty incredible. At the end, I was stumped for the Saturn, but it was still that kind of 32-bit era that lots of people have. The N64 had this kind of Mario 64 moment the first time they play 3D games. But for me, I think whatever console you had lots of those kind of moments where it was just a different way of playing. So for me, I was playing maybe Tomb Raider for the first time, and you have this tutorial section where you're running around her mansion, Lara's mansion. You're running around, and it's just fully 3D, and it was an incredible experience. And being able to play, for example, on a PlayStation, first of all, the Destruction Derby, and being able to turn your car around. Not like the super scaler games, which are great, but having a full 3D game where you can actually turn your car around and 360 degrees and race wherever you wanted. And of course, the Saturn had Sega Rally and Daytona USA, and so for me, the Saturn and the PlayStation are kind of linked together. I didn't really have any friends with an N64, but I was the only one with a Saturn in my neighborhood. It wasn't so successful. My friends they abandoned the Sega ship to go to PlayStation, but that was quite good actually, because I could sometimes I brought my Saturn around, and we had like two player games of Sega Rally and different kind of sports games, and I played their PlayStation as well. So it worked out well in the end. I think even when we were about 13 at the time, even then we thought we were too mature for this console stuff, but some people are 30 and 40 and still at it. So
there are people older than that today still reliving those fights. I mean, just check out some of the things you see on Twitter or YouTube comments, and you'll see that animosity is alive and well.
Yeah, so for me, that era is kind of very special, and I think especially for the Master System, I was very young, so my memories are a bit vague for that. And for the Mega Drive, I have a few more memories, but memories are a bit more clear of the Saturn.
Oh, my memories go all the way back to the Atari 2600. So.
Oh, we had one of those, but I think my dad must have got it kind of second hand or something when it was cheap, and we had a few games. And I remember the Star Wars game, I kind of liked to play that.
Another question I could ask about gaming today. What do you feel has been lost about games today versus what people were playing in the late 80s and early 90s?
Me personally, I think it's the sense of technological progress in terms of the graphics getting better and better. I know from terms of how much silicon's in the how many transistors are in the CPUs and so on. Moore's law has continued on, and they continue to get more and more powerful, and they're so much more. Even the PS5 is much more powerful than the PS4, but I don't think you really sense the jump as much as you did in previous generations. So going from even like Spectrum to the Master System, then to the Mega Drive, and even from the Mega Drive to the Super Nintendo, when you saw things such as Pilot Wings and F-Zero and so on, and seeing the Mega CD after that, and even these small kind of intra-generational jumps, not even just in between generations.
I'd say along those same lines.
3DO and
like I even remember getting our Genesis like the week after it came out, plugging it in, getting Altered Beast up and running, and just being floored about how much better it looked than everything else we had at that point.
Well, people like to do down Altered Beast these days, but I think it's because it's in every compilation, because it starts with an A, is always like the first one announced, and people say, oh, Altered Beast. But at a time when, the speech and the size of the sprites, and the fact you have 2 players, and the parallax scrolling, and that was an impressive technical
Which
showcase.
the arcade version didn't even have the parallax scrolling.
Sure, so they even improved it in some ways. It was a very simple game, but I think it's perfect for a pack-in, and it was and as you said, it's just like I said with like Shinobi as well. You put it in for the first time, it's like wow. I mean, the 16-bit era, and now I think jumping from say PS4 to PS5. I mean, the most important thing is the games, but I think what's missing is that sense of a jump. I mean, I've been playing a little bit of VR recently, and that when you play VR for the first time, that's actually that feels very different, because the gameplay is completely different. It's like going from 2D to 3D and then 3D to VR, because the way you play the games and the way the games designs are completely different. So I get a bit of that feeling these days from playing VR games. So I'm really looking forward to playing Resident Evil 4 in VR, and hopefully the next few weeks. Apart from that, regular consoles, I mean, it's still, I'm sure it's still fun to have a PS5, but I'm not, or it's the Xbox Series X, but I'm not exactly rushing out to. I'm not super excited to go out and buy one right now. I could buy one in a few years from now, maybe, or there's not
if they're in stock
I had.
in a few years.
It's a very it's a hypothetical question. Whether to buy one's a very hypothetical question, because you can't do one anyway.
I do have a PS5. I'll say there. The only reason I even got a PS5 is because I had a PS4 Pro that died last December. I wanted to just save some money and replace it with another Pro, but they were like practically the same price as the 5. So I'm like, oh, let me just try and get one of these since it plays all of my Pro games, and that's what I ended up doing.
You
so
far,
say
that. Now,
I was going to say, so far, I don't even own a PS5 game yet, even a year later. Suck on that, people who still can't get one.
You're going to make so many people angry now, but you've also given people some really bad ideas. People with a PS4 Pro are going to smash their Pro up and say to Sony, look, it stopped working, give me a PS5. And it might be a like a sneaky way to get a PS5.
Well, there you go.
Especially, I think if I had a PS5, I'd get some games. You're not interested in Dark Souls, the remake or anything else. There's a few decent games out, I think, already. Eternal and so on. You haven't been tempted?
Not really, so far. But let me just add that I did just this week order my first PS5 game, and that is the PS5 version of Guardians of the Galaxy. So that'll be here probably sometime next week or the week after, because it was back ordered.
Oh, at least you're getting a higher frame rates and nice 4K visuals and so on. So,
well, that's been the best part. I mean, I've played plenty of games on it. It's not just sitting around gathering dust or anything. It's just that I'm mainly playing PS4 games on it.
It's kind of like you've got like a new graphics card for your PC. It's the more of that feeding rather than jumping into a next
Pretty
generation.
Much.
So these days I'm kind of more excited by kind of retro announcements, and it's one of the reasons I want to do the tutorials, because I actually want to see other people making games for the Mega Drive, and I mean I've got my hands full making these 2 games already, so I like to see if we can get a few dozen people, even if you get the 10 people involved. That's actually quite a lot in terms of Mega Drive development, because the games are quite small, and if I can get, say, I always thought about the figure like 100 people. Even, I mean, my once I do my tutorial videos, I don't expect them to be as popular as the development diaries, because there are definitely audiences. Some people just want to see other people do it, they're interested in it, but they don't necessarily have the time or the desire to do it themselves. But if I get even like 100 people regularly tuning in and doing the tutorials, that'll be great, because I mean, some of the people who made the actual games back in the day, there was only maybe maybe 5 people or
Yeah.
6 people doing a whole game, and obviously they were working full time and they were professionals, but even 10 people working part time on a project together, maybe in a couple of years they can get it out, and depends on the scope of the game. But the good thing about 16-bit is that the scope of the games is kind of limited anyway by the hardware, so you're not going to go too crazy and include too much stuff. So I'm more excited by the whole retro scene than the modern scene. Or that I'm sure once it picks up pace, I'm sure we get some great PS5 games and Xbox Series X games and in the future as well.
Let me say, I don't think you'll have any problem getting at least 100 people to watch the tutorial videos.
I think watching, but how many are going to do it? So maybe...
Well, anyone who will actively do the steps from them, that might be less. Yep.
It's not a very basic, so there's going to be stuff like putting graphics on the screen, so even... I don't want people to feel that they have to, if they're going to take the tutorials, they have to create like an entire game and undertake a big project. For some people, they might always want to have fun. Just they might be into, art. They might be good drawing, and if I can teach them how to maybe create backgrounds, and that's all they do. Maybe they're just background creator for the Mega Drive, and that'll be a very useful skill if they work with other people. And so I can do the backgrounds, or some people like to design the sprites, or people like yourself who do the music. Maybe they know how to create the music in Def Master, but they don't know how to put that into like their own game and so on. So I think there's lots of different levels people can jump in. You don't necessarily have to be to do everything. I mean, for me, I find it quite fun doing the graphics and sound effects and music. One of the things I like about it is that you got your fingers in all these different pies, and it's very rewarding to do all these different kind of enter these different kind of fields. But for some people, they'll prefer to specialize in one thing, or just like as I said before, when I first started doing it, just putting a sprite on the screen is very exciting. So
yeah.
I hope people get a kick out of just drawing some simple background, putting it on their Mega Drive, and it'll be like a half-hour lesson. They can do that, and they'll be very happy about that. So hopefully, and some people will eventually maybe create their own games too.
All right, so with something like CastleVania Symphony of the Night, there is always a chance, and it might be a small one for something like this, that Konami could send one of those dreaded cease and desist letters. If that were to happen, what would happen with this project? Would you go on and do it with original artwork and assets, or what would you do next?
I think you've gone and jinxed it now. We've been fine, and now you've asked the question. You're going to jinx the whole project.
That was definitely my intention.
I think we'll be fine because first of all, I'm writing the whole code by scratch, so the whole code base is brand new. It's not like a hack or anything of Bloodlines. Some people ask if I'm hacking Bloodlines to make this. No, the code's written from scratch. I mean, even the graphics are completely redone. Obviously, the music's redone too, and I mean that wouldn't matter if we were going to say, okay, we're going to sell this, and it's still their IP. So no matter even if you recreate it from scratch, it's still their IP. But I mean, it's not been done as a commercial project. It's just going to be just an educational project. I said the way I've set it up, I've done it so it's like, okay, this is me learning how to program. It's me learning how to program for the Mega Drive in particular, and join me on this journey. And as we go along, of course, we want to release playable builds to people, so because part of making the game is the gameplay. So I want people to be able to play and test it and say what feels good, what doesn't. People can say, oh, this looks okay, but until they actually controlling it themselves in their own hands, it's hard to tell whether does it feel like Castlevania, does it feel like Alucard, and so on. So I think we should be okay. Touch wood. I'm not gonna. Yeah. I don't want to say too much. I don't want to jinx it. But I think we should be okay. And if they do a cease and desist, I mean, I'm not sure what the consequences are of that, but I don't think I'm gonna go up against Konami. So we'll cross that bridge as we come to it. But
would you still continue with just making Genesis software? Maybe like similar fashion, working on side-scrolling games just to show people how they work and what you could do.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. I mean, even with the Symphony of the Night one, part of it, of the project, apart from the fact that I like the game and the project's valuable in and of itself, it's almost, I almost consider it like an apprenticeship. You study like the masters, there's always a temptation to do. I have lots of ideas for my own games, a brand new original game. But I think it's a really good idea just to study some of the best games, and if I can imitate parts of Symphony of the Night, then I should be able to. So I have some ideas of a game probably similar to Symphony of the Night, kind of a Castlevania-esque game, but as an original IP. So obviously that will come far after the Symphony of the Night project's been completed. And once I do that, I can use a lot of the game engine and the code to do that. Obviously with new characters and new sprites and a new setting and new everything else. So even if it was shut down, I don't think it would have been a wasted effort, because for me this is all part of, it's just a way to learn programming. It's all part of the learning process. So even if tomorrow Konami, they forced me to stop doing this project, it still would have been worthwhile. I wouldn't regret anything.
I mean, it would still have been a valuable experience, and you're still going to make, videos and tutorial videos showing people how things work on the hardware and what you can do with it.
Yeah, sure. So I think for people like myself, it's always good as a first project to try and maybe do like a port or a remake, because a lot of the game's already there, so you don't need to. It just limits the stuff you need to think about, and so I think that's a good first and second project. So for me, this is like an apprenticeship. I can do these projects and try to imitate some of the classics, the greats, and then after that, I think I would like for both myself and for other people as well to create their own games, to create brand new IPs and new games, and sometimes somewhat inspired by it, but also just new creative ideas. And hopefully in a few years from now, I think it'd be nice if I can have a Symphony of the Night style game on the Mega Drive. I have lots of ideas about the character and the setting, and I'll keep it to myself by now, so I'm just thinking about lots of things. And I mean, it'll be kind of quite similar to Symphony of the Night. I think it'll be, maybe I introduce some Metroidvania elements as well, a bit on the Mega Drive, and I have lots of different ideas for games, and so I'll definitely still continue. Whatever happens, I'll still continue developing for the Mega Drives. It's been a real fun hobby. It's great.
I think everyone would still love to see what you're working on, even if it's not related to something established like Symphony of the Night or Shinobi. So have you looked into any modern development environments? Things like Unreal or Unity or Game Maker or anything like that?
Well, about a year or two ago, I did sign up for a Unity course. It's just one of those, I think it's Udemy or one of those. They had a sale on, and it was $10 a course, so I bought one of those courses, but I never even started it. And now I've already started on SGDK and retro game dev. I think if I go to something like Unity now, maybe it'd be so easy in comparison that it'll make it difficult to go back to retro game development. But
definitely be a lot different.
Would be a lot different, and it's almost crazy to imagine not having the restrictions, because in my head, when I'm thinking about the game's development, I'm always thinking about, we have these background layers and the sprites layer, and we have these palettes and everything else, and only 20 sprites per scan line, and they're always this constantly in my head. They're constantly setting like it's almost like the frame of a picture that you're drawing on, and so it'd be really weird to have those restraints removed. It'd be a bit disconcerting, to be honest. So I think that Unity course is probably going to lay dormant in my Udemy account, probably unused and unloved. And so if I do, once I move on for the Mega Drive, I think I will. If I want a more powerful hardware, then I'll probably move on to the mighty Sega Saturn, where I have I think 5 layers of backgrounds, if I'm not mistaken, and lots more colors and so on. So that would be my kind of next gen leap. I think after the Mega Drive, the Saturn would seem like a massive leap. It would seem almost limitless, and but I quite enjoy working within the strengths of the retro gaming hardware, and I do like to do modern coding stuff, programming stuff, but that's non-gaming related. I don't think I'd ever do Unity and so on.
Are there any other games that you would particularly love to see on the Genesis/Mega Drive that aren't already in development in some fashion, like in the homebrew community?
People have mentioned about Rondo of Blood, and I would love to see that on the Mega Drive, or even more on the Mega CD if anyone's up to programming on the Mega CD. As I said before, I initially wanted to do a remake of Master of Darkness, the Master System game, onto the Mega Drive. So if someone were to do that, that would be great too. I think I'd like to see someone do a nice Double Dragon game on the Mega Drive, like a decent one.
Yes.
And I know you've done some good soundtracks. You've done some really great Double Dragon remixes of the Mega Drive. So if someone could do like so I think that there were some good beat 'em ups on the Mega Drive, obviously with the Streets of Rage series and others. But I think there's room for some more. So I would love to see some maybe. And I loved Double Dragon on the Master System and in the arcade, but it kind of went downhill quite quickly. So
I'll just add, if anybody who's doing Genesis Mega Drive development sees this and they want to do a good port of Double Dragon, I will happily contribute any of my music to it.
It's a great idea. So I love to see Double Dragon, and can't think of much else. I'm sure someone was trying to do like a blasphemous demake on the Mega Drive.
Yeah.
Or I think they were just putting up. I think they were just testing out sprites and so on. So that would be a really impossible port.
I might have seen that. I don't remember. I look at a lot of these things.
Yeah, he did a pretty good job. Because obviously I don't know. God knows how many colors is in Blasphemous and how much you have to reduce that. And I'm not sure if they even use frames of animation or whether it's kind of. I think that's a fully pixel art game, so maybe they do have separate frames. But I mean, that's another level from Symphony of the Night even. So I wish them good luck with that. They were doing some I think Super Metroid stuff as well, which is quite interesting. But
yeah, I heard somebody saying something about Super Metroid, but I don't know if there was someone actually working on it or what the deal with that was.
I mean, I would love to see like a space-based kind of Metroidvania game, not Super Metroid. I think they could. I think that would be okay if they just started as Super Metroid and then they used that as a basis and they started almost like a port of Super Metroid, but obviously Nintendo are going to be on that.
Yeah.
I think you'd probably get away with it for maybe a year or two, but once you get to the end, but they could always.
Well, it's one of those things. It's one of those things where you'd have to do the whole project and then release it. So once they sent you the cease and desist, it's already out in the wild.
Yeah, sure. And the Super Nintendo, I mean, you've already got the Super Nintendo version, that's great, but it'd be good if they could start on the Super Metroid and then eventually pivot to their own maybe IP, their unique IP. But so I think Space is a really good, obviously, the kind of gothic and the horror theme of Cosplay is great too, but I think Space is a really good theme for this kind of Metroidvania type game. So they could do a great kind of a great game, like original IP of kind of a space-based Metroidvania. I mean, if I get time, I might even try myself at some point in the future. Who knows? But as with anything else, it would be better if someone else does it. Then I won't have to do all the hard work.
There you go.
Just to play it.
So, are you familiar with the homebrew scenes on any of the other retro computers or game systems? Any that you keep up with?
I keep up with the Saturn stuff, so I think that's a really interesting system. So, and that's because the Saturn has a reputation of being very complex hardware, but actually people in the last 2 or 3 years, people have been doing some really impressive stuff. So especially with the 3D stuff, they've been crazy transparencies, and some of the games they're creating for that is pretty incredible. So I'll keep a close eye on it, and I'm always tempted to dip my toe in and maybe do a little bit of development on that. And just obviously I'm busy, I'm pretty busy at the moment, but I thought, okay, maybe just like an hour a week, or
everyone's gonna yell, no, work on Symphony of the Night first.
Sure, but once I do an hour, that'll turn into 2 hours and 3 hours. So I have a very bad habit of taking up too many kind of hobbies at once, and as you can see, I'm really doing 2 games at the same time. I'm doing the GG Shinobi plus Symphony of the Night, so I'm restraining myself, I'm holding myself back. So but I'll keep a close eye on it. So I watch what other people are doing in the Saturn space. That's really interesting.
For the end here, is there anything that you would like to say or you would like people to know about the games that you're working on right now?
Not really. I'd just like to thank everyone for their support. I think everyone's been on board with the project I've been doing. So I think people realize that I'm still very much a beginner, and that's just not false modesty talking. That's really I really am new to all this, and I made lots of mistakes, and I've presented my videos as kind of like a journey in computer programming and game design as well. So I thank everyone for their patience. Everyone's been really great and positive and so on, and I think people have been a bit concerned about burnout. They've seen lots of projects like this in the past where people have started something, they've been very excited about it, but then a few weeks go by and there's no news, and what's happened, and then the project's just cancelled or it disappears. So for me, I've just been taking it very easy. I treat this as a hobby. I do it for a few hours a week. I have other hobbies. I have other stuff I do in my life too, and so I think that's a good way to avoid burnout. I always want to kind of give up time from other hobbies to do this, because at the moment this is probably my favorite hobby, but I'm resisting the temptation to do that, because I want to keep this kind of enthusiastic feeling towards it. I never want it to feel like a burden or work. So I just would say to people who are worried about burning out and so on, as long as they're happy that this is going to be done very slowly, a very leisurely pace, then I think they should be very happy, because I mean, you can never predict what's going to happen in the future, but I really don't see myself getting burnt out at the current pace I'm working. I'm working at a very relaxed pace, a really enjoyable pace. When I speak to, Pyron, for example, he says he sees his graphical work as a relaxation time for him. It's fun, recreational time, and I feel the same with me. And I think you music guys are really enjoying it too. I don't think you're under kind of massive pressure. And obviously, when you've got so many people watching the videos and giving you support, part of you wants to get it done more quickly and put more effort into it, put more hours into it. But I'm resisting that urge. I'm looking at the long term rather than the short term. I want it to be sustainable, a sustainable project, a sustainable hobby, and so I think people should relax. I'm gonna take this slowly. I'm gonna go slowly but surely. It's like the tortoise and the hare. So I'm gonna be the tortoise, and I'm gonna go very slowly. But I'm confident as long as nothing Konami related happens, this will eventually get finished.
All right.
And the same with the GG Shinobi game too.
Okay, and is there any advice you would have for people who are interested in this and don't have any experience in programming about how they should start, where they should go, anything like that?
Sure, I'd say first of all, go and check out the tutorials I recommended before. I think that was in the 4th Dev Diary video. I've got some links there, the Parents New Graphics video. I'm pretty sure that's the one. If you look in the video links, I think there's 3 or 4 tutorials I linked to. I can't remember the exact addresses right now. So it said go through the tutorials where it teaches you how to make Pong and so on, these platform games. I know people maybe want to get straight onto doing Rondo of Blood or something big like that, but trust me, when you're doing it on your Mega Drive, even Pong is a lot of fun. It's a good first project, and all the others too. Just be a bit patient with it and take it slowly. And once you start getting into it and you start creating stuff, you'll find that the people in the community are very helpful. Or I get help on a weekly basis. I ask, how do I do this? How do I do that? I always get people helping me. So it's a very supportive community, and hopefully I'll contribute myself to that in the future. Next year, hopefully I'll have my YouTube tutorials up, and hopefully people will get into that. They will do the graphics and get into the game logic and so on. And it's a fun hobby. Just treat it as a hobby, treat it as a lot of fun. You don't necessarily, I think there's some things about the way in the modern world you can create like a Kickstarter, you can monetize stuff, but I'd say to begin with, just treat it as I'm treating it now, just as a hobby, just a fun piece of recreation, just as you would watch Netflix. Or for example, I'm learning to play classical guitar right now. I'm not envisioning being going to people paying me to play at concerts or anything. It's just something I do in the privacy of my own home for my friends and family and so on. And so that's how I treat the programming too. So just have fun with it.
All right, and then to finish up, I guess I'll turn around and say, do you have any questions for me about either doing the music or anything else related to this or whatever?
How did you start with the music? Because I mean, your music channel's only been up for I think a year now or so on, but I would guess you've been doing music a lot longer than that. Well, you already
for Genesis music, I only started doing that, I can tell you exactly, last August, so August 2020. Finally got Deplomask and gave it a try. First song I did was a version of The Great Bath from Turrican 2, because I thought that the Genesis version and Universal Soldier sounded terrible. I'm like, I'm sure the system's capable of better. I wonder what I could do as somebody with no experience with this. So I put that together. I'm like, this sounds pretty good. And then I put it on my channel. If I look at that video today, I'm like, this doesn't sound good at all. What was I thinking back then? But for music in general, I mean, a long time ago, talking 20 plus years ago, I got started with computer music. I was doing MIDIs of songs from games. And the first one I tried to do was Bloody Tears, the version from Dracula X, Rondo of Blood. And it came out pretty awful, but it's what got me started, and I did a whole slew of MIDIs back then. And then I stopped for a very long time and only really got back into it last year when I started doing this Genesis stuff. I don't really play instruments in such that I am not classically trained in anything. But I can play some keyboard and I can play some guitar.
Oh, it's very impressive. And I thought you'd be reading sheet music or have some kind of played piano as a kid or something like this.
Nope. I took one class on piano when I was in college, which was over 20 years ago. I just had one course on it in there. I've had keyboards and stuff since I was a kid and always messed around with them. I was even in a band for a little while. But I have no official training of any type.
What advice would you give to people who want to start creating Mega Drive music then? Because obviously you can download Deplomask as I have. And for me, the most overwhelming thing is the instruments, because creating your own is very, very complex. It seems you have all these different factors you can change, and so then you think, okay, I can just download, because you have lots of instruments from existing games, from existing soundtracks, but then you're given with this huge choice of these different instruments, and it's like, which one do you choose and why, and how do you alter it? And it seems pretty overwhelming for me. So in the end, with the Squid Game, I ended up with just using the default Def Mask piano, because I was just overwhelmed by choice. And I'm not sure how you would advise any beginners to kind of handle that.
What I would say for anyone starting out that has never messed with any of this stuff before, I would just stick to the default instruments. And I'm going to do some pretty detailed tutorials on this. I've been putting them together for a while. I just haven't put any online yet. And I would start with just the very most basic things. Use the built-in instruments. Try and create a song just using one channel, with different timing on the notes. Figure out timing, which is the key thing, how you get that working. Even if you know how to read sheet music, it's not going to seem like the most natural thing in the world moving over to a tracker, like Def Mask is. You've got to understand that you've now transformed to dealing with rows that are numbered instead of using a staff with measures that can be different sizes and all that. Without getting too much into the weeds, if you're doing something like 4/4 timing, that translates really well to doing like 32 rows of measure, and then just, adjusting the speed to whatever you need it to be to match whatever song you're working on or whatever song you're creating. And then once you have the music part of it down and working with timing and all that stuff, that's when I would say, you can move on to really messing around with the instruments and creating your own, which that is really a whole another level of depth to this that it seems like it's easy and it's nothing when you first start dealing with it. But when you realize the layers of subtlety that you can program into this to try and create more natural sounding instruments, that's when it really becomes complex and requires a lot of time with messing around. To sum up that very long answer, again, start with the simple things, work on timing, use the default instruments, and then start, playing around with the other stuff after that would be my advice. Learn to walk before you learn to run.
I think that's what I've started to do actually since a few weeks ago, but that wasn't before I started to run and tripped over and did a somersault and fell in the dirt and picked myself up and decided to start walking instead. So I definitely agree with your advice, what you've given about sticking to the default instruments for now, and because I started to try and maybe do my own instruments, and I don't think that's a very good first step.
Yeah, I started doing that early on, like, let me just create my own and see what I can do. And I realized I don't understand how any of this works. So at that point, you're just playing around with sliders and numbers without having any real understanding about what you're actually changing when you do that. And that's the thing that takes a while to learn. And like I said, at least for me, I haven't found any great resources for that yet, which is a big reason why I'm going to create my own tutorials to walk people through a lot of that.
I can't wait for your tutorials. I want to get into it myself. I thought a few months ago that I might have to do all the music myself for the CastleVania and for the GG Shinobi, so I didn't know if there's anyone interested in helping me with those. So now I've got a good team doing the yourself and other people doing the CastleVania and the Shinobi music. That's not really an urgent issue anymore, but I still, just for my own enjoyment, I think it's really, you get into doing the music, it's pretty fun. You know, even the tracker is quite interesting, and choosing the instruments and so on, and just seeing it play on the Mega Drive. So it's something I wanted to continue to do, and even though I don't really need to do it right now. So I'm really looking forward to your tutorials on that. It'd be a lot of fun to I've checked out a few online. There's a few on YouTube if you search, but some of them get really in depth really quickly about instruments. I think they're for maybe musicians, people already musically talented and musically trained, and something there's one that's a 10-minute tutorial, and it's really dense. It's a very good tutorial, but it's definitely for people who have got a bit more experience. So I think there's definitely a gap for like a real beginner tutorial.
That has been my exact experience on there. Like, I don't want to criticize and say, oh, everyone who's made a tutorial right now stinks, because I don't think that's the case. There's, a lot of tutorials you can find on Def Mask out there, but I don't think there are any that are really targeted at the beginner and taking them from a place where they know nothing to a place where they can create the songs, set their timings, put in their effects, and program their own instruments. And my goal would be to help somebody do that completely from scratch with having zero knowledge of any of this, because that was how I started. It has been a very long journey, even though it's only been a year and a few months to get to this point.
Absolutely. There's one in particular. It's a very good tutorial. I think it's 40 minutes long, and it said, I think it's about making the instruments, and it's about 40 minutes long and went into great detail. The guy's a really good teacher, and he said, part 1. I think that was 2 years ago, and I was like, okay, where's part 2, please? I think part 2 said he's going to do the tracker and the timings. And
I've seen that one. I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah, it's just, oh, no. I mean, I haven't been waiting 2 years. I only spotted it about 3 months ago. But even then, when you see a part 1, you're very excited, and you go through part 1, and then it's part 2. So
I can tell you, my part 1 will definitely be out before the end of the year, and part 2 will follow definitely no later than January. And then I don't know from there. They're not going to have like regular releases where, oh, it's going to be once a month, but it'll be every so often, peppered in with the other stuff on my main channel.
It's one of the reasons when I'm going to do I'm going to do like a basics tutorial series for the Mega Drive program. So like just stuff like how to put sprites on the screen, how to animate it, how to put background, how to do parallax scrolling. But I'm going to film all of the I think there's going to be maybe 20 lessons or 30 lessons in this basic series. I want to get them all done and filmed, and then just release them to a schedule. So I know how frustrating it is sometimes when you get like a part 1 and you're waiting and waiting. And it's just, I don't blame the creators, because stuff happens in life. But so that's why I'm going to just make sure I can get everything filmed and done, and say, okay, at the very least you have this complete little beginner series, and maybe stuff will happen after that, and it would take a while for me to get out the next tutorial or something, but at least you've got this kind of this little set of tutorials where you can get started at least, because I know I've been on the other side of that as a learner, where it's very you really like the tutorials and the person's a really great teacher, and you think, oh, where's the next one, when's it coming out?
That definitely happens. I guess I'll go ahead and end things here, since we've been talking for a while, and I think we've covered a lot of bases on this. I just want to say again that this is a really interesting project. I've thought so from the instant I've seen it. Very excited to see what you do with it, no matter how long it takes to get there. I'm so excited myself to be a part of it. And I just want to thank you a lot for spending all this time with me talking about it.
Thank you too. Thanks for inviting me on. It's good to chat with you finally, because we've just communicated through email until now. And thanks so much for helping with the music. Anyone who's heard my music in the Squid Game knows that if it wasn't for you and other people, the music for the CastleVania game probably wouldn't be sounding so hot right now. So people should be very grateful to you, and check out your other music as well. And I think this is the CastleVania project in particular, and also the Shinobi one, have ceased to be just my project. It's more like our project now, especially with all the people involved. So it's been great working with everyone. It's been a good experience. So hopefully we'll all get it done together.
Yep, it's been a great experience for me, and I really want to see what we can do with all of this.
I think the future is definitely that Konami are going to be so impressed that they're going to sign us up, and I think Tech Toy Brazil are going to talk to Sega, and we're going to get official release in Brazil, and they're going to release the Mega Drive with the Symphony of the Night and GG Shinobi as packing games.
Well, all I can say is I don't see any scenario in which that doesn't happen.
I think that's the most realistic scenario right now.
All right. So once again, thanks for doing this, and I will talk to you later.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. All right, so there we are for now. You can expect further discussions with Pigsy down the road through later phases of the project. They'll be rare because it doesn't make sense to keep talking to someone about the same project every few weeks, does it? So I'll leave Pigsy to work in peace and check in on the status of the project every now and then. But if you haven't yet, I definitely do encourage you to subscribe to his channel so you can follow his progress yourself. That'll do it for this video, my retro gaming friends. If you enjoyed the video, please toss it a like and share it. If you haven't yet, hey, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you'll know when new videos are released. I also just recently set up Patreon and Ko-fi pages if you want to help contribute to the channel to improve it. With that, I'll say thanks for watching, and see me later.